Most gamers love a gorgeous open world, but in the case of video games, bigger doesn't always mean better. While I have actually done a list here covering off on the biggest of the big open world maps in video games, we were really only interested in the numbers there. Here we're more concerned with covering off on quality as opposed to quantity. In fact, we've collected 10 open world maps that are an absolute joy to run around in, even if they're pretty tiny in comparison to most open world maps out there. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 tiny but excellent open world maps in video games. Number 10. Prague, Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I promise that we'll stop mentioning Deus Ex as soon as we come across a list where it isn't just so relevant that we'd be remiss not to mention it. While some took issue with the fact Mankind Divided could be beaten in a modest 20 to 30 hours, others were glad to see it burn bright while it lasted and not outstay its welcome. The same could be said for its map of Prague, which absolutely prioritized quality over quantity. Though the map more accurately consists of a collection of small open-world map areas and not one consistent open world, it has all the hallmarks of why tiny open worlds can be so great. It capitalizes on less space to deliver more detailed environments that give you more to do and deep side quests to stumble upon. Each area oozes character and conveys such richness in their sense of place that they feel totally immersive. This is the perfect example of those video game maps that people say are just a joy to be in and walk around in just because of its incredible world design. You want to do every little thing because just existing in the game feels exciting. Eidos Montreal designed Mankind Divided's hub world of Prague deliberately small so players would always be surrounded by something interesting, and there'd be no need for boring copy-paste buildings just to make the city more sprawling. It's an ethos that leaves you with a world you can and want to properly take in, peppered with environmental storytelling and plenty of delicious lore tidbits. Number 9. The Island, The Witness. As for a game that packs in details in an engrossing world but in a totally different way from our last entry, we've got The Island from The Witness. The island may have a solid handful of hidden nooks and crannies, but it's still pretty small as open world areas go. That said, it'll still take you a while to get through, though your mileage will vary depending on your puzzle-solving prowess. The world is colorful, highly saturated, and it's not just for show either. While many of the puzzles take place on identifiable screens peppered throughout the island's many biomes, some are environmental. In order to solve both, you'll actually need to note things like the position of the sun, the way trees are designed, the wear and tear on a windmill. If you're anything like me and while playing this game you jump between feeling like you're an absolute genius and the stupidest person on earth, it's a damn good thing that this game is very pretty and a blast to walk around in. Number 8. Bulworth, Bully. Rockstar Games are absolutely not known for creating tight but enormously effective maps of late, but they used to be. They still make beautiful game worlds thriving with life, secrets, and things to do, but they're anything but little. Not so for the fictional town of Bulworth and the central location of Bulworth Academy that sets the stage for 2006 action-adventure game Bully. Due to its small size, the game world feels completely alive. Wherever you are wandering in the boarding school, you can hear kids talking, arguing, going about their days, and altering their routines based on what time it is. You have so much freedom about how you want to interact with the world, but the world also logically reacts back. If you skip class, you get in trouble, and the school does close at the end of every day. The music is excellent, there's something interesting to see or do around every corner, and because it's so densely packed in a small package, it genuinely feels like there's little to no filler. Number 7. Arkham City, Batman Arkham City. In order to be the baddest and coolest guy protecting an entire city, you need to feel like you have a lay of the land and presence in said city. And Batman absolutely gets that in this surprisingly modest-sized open world. Arkham City is a gigantic, walled-off prison enclosure that exists as a district of Gotham City. Given the game is offering up an open-world playground for Batman to stroll, glide, and grapple his way around, it would be easy for it to feel too small, given our main man gets around town pretty quickly. This would be the case if there weren't so many reasons to stop and smell the roses, or stop and pick up the Riddler trophies and knock a criminal's lights out in this case. The world is fantastically designed, a joy to explore, there's so much to do, and it feels like loving detail has been poured into every single feature. It may be bigger than its predecessor Arkham Asylum, which could also easily occupy a spot on this list, but it feels densely packed and satisfyingly conquerable. It's tricky to nail a quality over quantity open world that still makes you feel like the world's greatest detective, but if there's anybody who's up for the job, it's clearly Rocksteady. Number 6. Hawk Peak Provincial Park, a short hike. Now for something completely different, we know a AAA studio riddled with talent and manpower can make an open world feel like a rich playground. But this particular open world was designed and programmed by just one person. Okay, so given that, it kinda checks out that it's small, but it's also really cleverly designed. Much like many of the game creators on this list, a short hike creator Adam Robinson Yu went in with the ethos of quality over quantity, both for the length of the game and the size of the map. Your role is pretty simple. You're an anthropomorphic bird who needs phone reception from the peak of the mountain. You'll also wander around exploring the pretty game world, collecting items, meeting other animals, fishing, and taking on side quests, among other things. It's sort of a tiny Breath of the Wild, and for lack of a better description, the vibes are just immaculate. In short, times are tough right now. Go play volleyball on the beach with your bird friends. Number 5. Hong Kong, Sleeping Dogs. While admittedly not the smallest map on this list, it is only about the size of Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and it probably only seemed big because it's just so damn good. Much like Deus Ex, we'll stop talking about sleeping dogs when it stops being so necessary to talk about. This game and its depiction of Hong Kong is almost universally beloved for a very good reason. Coming in at under 2 square miles, Sleeping Dogs does so much with its relatively small space. Given how much we're cramming into just 4 districts, it creates a game world that's incredibly detailed, a blast to explore, and just packed with all sorts of opportunities to engage. It combines with the enthralling narrative to create a city that's both engrossing and immersive. So much attention was paid to ensuring the game authentically replicated Hong Kong, and it was praised by reviewers for retaining the real-world soul and charm of the city. Every street feels alive, the environment feels lived in, and it's the perfect stage for Shen's incredible story. Number 4. Empire Bay, Mafia 2. Proving again that you don't have to be a brand new release to nail a rich yet tiny open world, we've got 2K's Mafia 2, which released in 2010. Lovingly crafted in a top-to-bottom attempt to replicate America in the 1940s and 50s, the map may not be riddled with side content, but it's so wonderfully detailed that just looking around and appreciating all it has to offer is a joy in and of itself. The sights and sounds of the city add so much to the overall world building, which feeds back into your investment into the narrative and your complicated relationships with Empire Bay's inhabitants. The lived-in nature of Mafia 2's environments, both big and small, make Vito feel more like a real person. From the era-appropriate cars that are markedly different in their looks right down to their handling, to the internal environments riddled with posters and knickknacks. It feels like every area has a story to tell. Given that one of Mafia 2's greatest strengths is its writing, it's wonderful that it had this gorgeous, rich, and yet fairly small game map to tell it in. Number 3. London, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. 1.4 square miles may not seem like the smallest map ever, but hear me out. It's smaller than Hong Kong and Sleeping Dogs, it's a recreation of London, and let's face it, we're combining Assassin's Creed and map size here. The outcome usually isn't modest. Assassin's Creed Syndicate does just that though. While its successors AC Origins and AC Odyssey would come in at 30 square miles and almost 100 square miles respectively, Syndicate was a little baby map at 1.4. That said, what it did with Victorian London was really cool. Even if it doesn't top your AC favorites list, the freedom in exploring the gorgeously designed city, especially in its verticality, is immensely satisfying. The lived-in nature of the town is enhanced by everything from historical figures like Karl Marx to a dawdle through the park revealing NPCs playing cricket. Venturing through London at the onset of the Second Industrial Revolution, whether by foot or carriage, just feels great. The atmosphere is fully captured by all of the lovely little details, and it's a very cool experience. It also might be the last time you play a really small AC map, so if that's something you really enjoy, maybe check that one out. Number 2. Hyrule, The Legend of Zelda. While I really do love to come here on What Culture lists and tell you things that you don't already know, I can't be that person right now, because what I have to do is tell you that The Legend of Zelda has a tiny but excellent open world map. It's not news, but we have to pay credit where it's due, and this game was a pioneer of open world game design. Not to mention it's obviously fantastic, and it spawned one of the best open worlds ever made in Breath of the Wild, which only doesn't appear on this list because it's way too big. Breath of the Wild aside, The Legend of Zelda Zelda the First was praised upon release for its graphics. Yes, really. Remember, this one came out first in 1986. It was also celebrated for having a game world positively filled with secrets, treasures, exciting beastie encounters, and effectively setting the stage for Link's epic hero's journey. Given the game relied entirely on players' natural desire to explore to press themselves forward, the allure of the world design was absolutely essential to its success. It might not seem like much to look at now, but The Legend of Zelda changed the game for rich, detailed video game experiences, and it did all that with what is, in retrospect, a pretty small map. Number 1. Kamurocho, YAKUZA series. It's a strange concept for me to sit here and tell you that using the same map repeatedly in a series is the best choice a developer could have made. But YAKUZA isn't just any series, and Kamurocho isn't just any city. It's exciting, mysterious, wildly unpredictable, and delightfully familiar all at once. Riddled with eateries, all of which you can order from, NPCs to offer you missions, and overarching narratives that tell the story of a city at war with itself and its inhabitants who more often than not prioritize family above all else, Kamurocho is something else. Though the fictional Tokyo district largely stayed the same as the series wore on, you spend so much time in its relatively small borders that you notice the little things that do change, especially when the game switches decades. The city and vibe may stay the same, but there's always a new crazy character to meet, a city-sprawling sub-story to pull at your heartstrings, or a cat for you to help home. Additionally, later games and the Judgment spin-off would use the same city but allow for more vertical traversal, allowing you to explore the city even further. Because of its relatively modest size, every tiny part of the city is thriving and detailed. You naturally learn the history of the place and grow the same nuanced relationship with it that original series protagonist Kazuma Kiryu did. Kamurocho's size ensures there's somewhere to shop, something to eat, someone to fight, something to pick up, and someone to help around every corner. And that's what makes the city so iconic. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other tiny but excellent open worlds in video games. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at JessMcDonald, but make sure you do stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.